Hi guys.
Yes, I can read it.
Yeah, alright, okay.
Well, I don't want to.
Alright, you're going to give me a kiss on this most auspicious occasion.
Is that auspicious or suspicious?
Suspicious, auspicious, and yeah, I won't say the other, you normally do.
She wanted me to read something, I'm not going to, but I was demonstrating this small print, how I can easily best plugging along in the Golightly-Marshall hour. And I'll just show you how small it is. A tiny print there. I can read that without glasses.
Alright, darling. Okay. Get the drift.
I can read it up close like this.
Yes.
Or that far.
Yeah, we were having, we were at a cafe during the week having an eyesight test because Yah's eyes are improving. He doesn't need his glasses anymore, and you know we use these readers. We have 12 pairs of these readers. They cost
really given 50 cents a piece. These things in the op shop.
Each. We got
now
12.
I don't need glasses. What a waste.
My eyes are getting better, but not as at the rate that Yah's is. But anyway, bottom line is.
Well, I'm getting younger.
Bottom line is that I'm going away again on Monday, tomorrow morning. Oh, the auspicious occasion is that it's Yah's Jesus birthday today. It is Sunday, the 17th of June in the year 2018. So the Ancient of Days here is looking pretty good for an old man. 2,000 years old. And it is coincidentally Father's Day in the USA and Canada. I've just been communicating with two daughters over there and others who, Monica, thank you for the Father's Day email that you sent. And what we're going to do is go back to the Jordanian Codice today. I want to read, Faye, your email is just beautiful and other people need to hear it. I got it during the week and I will read that after we make this as the intro to the Jordanian Codice. Yah painted, now you hold on to this. Since I'm not going to read it now, I can put that down. You hold on to the right. And what we're talking about is this self-portrait that Yah painted. The man in the golden helmet. Of course, it's a famous Rembrandt painting. But Yah painted this and finished it on July the 31st in the year 1977, and he painted his face as the man in the golden helmet. Now, you will see, a lot of you will remember...
There's a date on the bottom there, you can see it.
Yeah.
Right here.
A lot of you will remember that we already did this, but it went south, if you like, when SwordOfTruth3168 channel was terminated recently because we were getting way too hot. For the, have you all heard? Netanyahu has announced that we have a supreme race amongst us, and it's the lovely people. Supremacy.
Don't say anything about it, it'll upset me.
The lovely people supremacy. Hello.
Even Jesus wasn't one of them, believe it or not.
Oh my gosh, the world just gets crazier and crazier, but not in this household. We laugh a lot. And
Francis has said that Jesus, he failed at the cross. With
his life ended in failure at the cross.
And all you Catholic women out there better start mating with the Muslims. That's what they've brought in several million of them. Because all you men have been eating too much soybeans and can't have any children.
No, well, we know
the Arabs don't eat soy. Now
let's clarify this because we know that the reason that the European nations and within the USA and in Australia that the birth rates have fallen is because soy has been deliberately introduced into the food chain from at least the early 1970s to become part of the everyday diet mostly through wheat products, through baker's flour, which is wheat flour and soy flour. Soy, the bean itself, it's called the abominable bean, has 38 deadly toxins in it, and it takes 5 years of processing under fermentation to remove 37 of those, and the final one that cannot be removed strips the body of vitamin B12, which is why the Japanese eat fish with their 5-year fermented soy sauce to be any good at all. However, it's been introduced into the food chain, and the first thing that soy does is attack the thyroid, and it causes men and women to become infertile. And that's why, not like Francis accuses the selfishness of the white European nations for their selfish lifestyle and their decadence, etc. That is the reason for not living up to replacing even themselves the birthright. And hence,
it's an act of God.
And hence they need the help from the sub-Saharan Sudanese.
Sub-Saharan and subhuman, I might add.
Oh my goodness.
It's all about, Israel is all to do with the Essenes, and in the Jordanian Codex, which has got my face in it, that's why we showed you the picture, we'll show you later on.
Yeah.
One of the greatest scholars that's looked at it is from Great Britain. I think he might have been born in Ireland, of Catholic origin, but became a scholar of ancient languages, etc. And he has examined. And the codexes were, luckily, the criminals got involved and were selling the codexes to the highest bidder. And of course the Jordanians, which are all controlled by those lovely people. Wonderful people.
Lovely people.
Don't say nothing about them.
The lovely people, supreme race.
And Netanyahu's right on that point.
Notice, however, it's taking the lid off religion, because they like to cloak it as a religion, but no, it's all about the lovely people, race.
They're wonderful people. I tell you what.
And
what Hitler did to them, I'm telling you.
The most racist, lovely people on the planet, and the enemy.
Fancy putting them in concentration camps and feeding them and keeping them away from their bombing raids from England. Can you imagine that evil bastard doing to that lovely people?
Yeah.
Oh.
The propaganda. The lies.
The lovely people.
Oh, I hear somebody at the door, and must be John. Must be John. John?
Yes.
We're recording.
It is you. Yes, it's John.
So, okay, here's John. Keep going.
I've forgotten what I was saying.
Oh, we'll talk about the
they're lovely
lovely
people.
concentration.
And how the population, even though they all shot through out of Germany, they were all Hungarians that were rounded up. There wasn't one German Jew locked up in any of the camps. They were all Hungarians. And they're also lovely people, because George Soros is one of them.
Soros, babe.
Him as well.
Him as well. That's his brother, yeah. Yeah. Two Johns.
They're lovely people, so I don't want to say nothing about them. Take back my word.
Can we move
I
right
wasn't one of them.
We want to get this up today.
I do.
On this auspicious occasion of your 2018 birthday.
This is a suspicious occasion. All right, let's not talk about the lovely people anymore.
No, we want
Let's
to talk about
the mongrel race.
No, the
white
codices.
people.
The
The
codices.
Israelites.
We want to talk about the codices.
Oh, the codex.
Yes.
Yeah, getting back to the codex, what they've done, this fellow, the antiquities dealers get into it, and they've all stolen most, a lot. I wouldn't say most, but a lot of them. And of course, the good thing about it is, maybe let's say they get $1 million for some ancient thing that they've discovered. Well, all you've got to do is say, right, who owns some? We'll give you 10 times what you paid for it, and you get it back. Right? That's the good thing. Good thing about all these ancient masterpieces that have been stolen and sold into private dealers. So they want to make money on it, right? So we'll get it back. No problem. You won't be able to get them out of the Jordanian antiquities or the Egyptian antiquities or the Israeli antiquities, because they're the ones that are trying to stop them. Now what they did, this, I think it's Elkington, wasn't it?
David Elkington, yes.
He, brilliant scholar, he was arrested and he was threatened. Well, he was leaving the country with his wife, and his wife was allowed to leave, but he was taken back to the antiquities, and all these thugs got hold of him, antiquity people, and for Jordan, and said unless that the British-held antiquities codexes aren't sent back, that they will cut his throat.
Slit his
Isn't that lovely people?
Yeah.
And so they had to arrange to have them sent back. However, he was told that he can't write about it, can't talk about it, can't do nothing of his opinion, being it's Jesus Christ in the Codex. So when he gets back to England, they say to him, if you talk about it, we will send someone to cut your throat. Isn't that lovely? So he is now talking about it. And he is saying absolutely it's all about Jesus, and Jesus was an Essene, and talking about the Holy Spirit mentioned in the codexes as being the mother, and because that is the female side of honour your mother and honour your father, which is what Jesus was talking about, being the Holy Mother and the Holy Father. So this is what the Essenes are all about. So the Yahweh and Asherah show up today, and they don't like that at all. So they're trying to keep that real quiet. And also, Jesus was not an Essene, he was a Jew. Right? Hello? No, he wasn't.
Great big lie.
Great big lie. As far as I was concerned, if they were said Jesus was a pile of shit, I'd be more inclined to say, yeah, well, I can go along with that, but certainly wasn't a fucking Jew. Right? Because I'd rather be a pile of shit than a nice chosen person. You know?
One of the lovely people.
One of the lovely people.
From the seed of Cain.
Oh, yes.
Satana, India, 2500 BC.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very annoyed at Hitler because he didn't do what they accused him of.
Alright.
Anyhow.
So, what we're going to do with this happy intro on this auspicious occasion. Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers in North America. And thank you for your best wishes to Yah for his Jesus birthday and Father's Day. We will attach this to the comparison of the Codice along with Yah's self-portrait here. This again was done, it was up on Sword of Truth. Pierre did the wonderful progression, so I'll add that in because I found it in the archives today. And then we will attach to that. It's an hour and a half, isn't it?
Well, we're going to shorten up.
We'll shorten it up. We'll attach to that.
We're going to put in the main bit what Eddington was saying about how he's going to have his throat cut and all that. It's telling the truth.
Yeah.
By the people that's in charge of the codices in Jordan, which are the lovely people who was in charge.
Now, while we were in Egypt in 2013, we were there for 10 weeks, and we were told by the people on the ground there and who got quite close to us, including the one who tried to poison you, but anyway, that $230,000 US is paid every year for whatever discoveries are made in any archaeological dig. It goes through their antiquities, and then it goes, it's now possessed by the lovely people because they've paid their bribe for the year. That's a yearly payment. And Hawass was the dude at the time when we were there.
Mother was a Jewish woman from America.
Right, and it's Hawass that is in charge of antiquities of Egypt, while Elkington...
I think he might have been replaced by now. Anyway, while he was there at the time.
Now,
so they're behind cutting off all information. Like the Great Pyramid is not the altar to the Lord as Isaiah determined it is, because it's got all my numbers in it. It was built by half-crazed Egyptians to honour the Khufu or Khufu.
Cheops or whoever.
Whatever it was.
Wrong.
Worth mentioning.
Wrong. The altar to the Lord in the midst of Egypt, of course, is the Great Pyramid. And so let's move right along. There's just one last thing that I want to show because Faye, you asked for it, and a couple of others.
We can do that separately, then, can't we?
Okay, yeah, I'll read Faye's email.
Because we want to talk about lovely people.
Right, and then I'll show you, what I'm taking to my grandson. So with that, we'll say, Lady Gators, where's the... You can do it. You've got it. You've got the control.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Lady Gators.
And happy birthday, Donald Trump.
For the 14th. This is a close-up of what we just showed in the intro, and yes, man in the golden helmet that he painted and dated on July the 31st, 1977. when he was 12255 days old, which is 1750 weeks or 33.55 years. 1750 in the Greek side of the James Strong's Concordance is from the verse Mark 15:46, and it means wrapped him in the linen and laid him in a sepulchre. And of course it's referring to the Shroud of Turin, which is the burial cloth as Jesus, and the image on it is Yah today, and what Pope Benedict recognised throughout March of 2013, and why he had to be shut down, and so did his witnesses that were kidnapped and then later murdered. They were the witnesses to what was unfolding within his office. Now, the next photograph, got you on screen capture, so I'm going here we go. Here's the comparison. It was Gabe who first alerted me to the face on the Jordanian Codices, that you will hear the remarkable story. We've shortened it to 40 minutes, the interview with David Elkington and the lady that was with him, his remarkable story pertaining to the authenticity of the codices and what he went through with the lovely people above the Jordanian antiquities, who, of course, can't have this escape. What is interesting in the interview that follows with David Elkington, towards the end of it, the 40 minutes that we captured, he said that the codices, some of them, because there were 70 books totaling, that he refers to the Pope at the time of the Knights Templars and when they went to Jerusalem. To destroy them. But what did they call when they went to Jerusalem?
70 books.
Yeah, the 70 books, but it's all right. The Crusades. The Crusades, it's all right. The Crusades. Part of the Crusades was to find the books and destroy them. So this
they'd already been taken out by Jews.
Yeah, exactly, the lovely people. But the point is that David Elkington said in the interview that in 2013, where the codices were being locked up, had been broken into, and of all the antiquities that were kept in that facility, only a certain amount of the codices were stolen. Hello, I just want to point out to everybody, it was 2013 in March that Pope Benedict announced to the world the face of the Shroud of Turin was that of Brian Leonard Golightly-Marshall, the image of the Shroud of Turin. And of course last year again we uploaded the face on the Jordanian Codices. This is what it is on the left, is that of Yahweh-Jesus, Brian Leonard Golightly-Marshall. And I am dead certain, even if they didn't know it at the time, that they stole those codices in 2013 because the enemy knows that it's the face of Yahweh. End of story.
The beauty of it is that whoever stole them would have sold them for a fortune, and that's the best thing that can happen to them, because all you've got to do to get them back is to offer them 10 times the amount of money they paid for them.
Right.
And they'll give them back to you. Right? But the Jordanian authorities will not ever release them.
So let's look at this, that work that Pierre did. I added to Pierre's work. This is the transitioning, as Pierre once again overlaid the Codice over Yah's face from a video, again taken at the time of Benedict's announcement in 2013. Now, the Yeshua that again David Elkington talks about in the Codices, he talks about Yeshua and James, Jacob, Peter and John being the main apostles, which of course they were. The Yeshua is being recorded from a service. It was a prayer vigil at the cave church. We went there, the Church of the Zabbaleen, this amazing church they carved out of a grotto at the Zabbaleen community. They're calling out for Yeshua. And so their prayer, the 30,000 people that were gathered at the time calling out for Yeshua, we went there. And it was because of this. It was because I knew of this cry of theirs, and I even mentioned it to Pope Benedict at the time when we were communicating in 2013. So we go there in October of 2013, and we were escorted off the premises because, again, the father, who didn't even deign to meet with us, he gave instructions to the young man called Adam, who called him to say, I've got people here with a letter from Pope Benedict saying that this man is the Christ. Well, the arrogant SOB immediately got very angry and said, have them escorted out and make sure you take the film out of their camera, because we were recording everything. So this is for the people who were crying out for Yeshua at the time. Let's just listen to a few minutes of this before this will follow into the interview with David Elkington. Right, now that just plays out repeating the cry for Yeshua over and over. So I'll stop this here and then...
Just run it quickly across to see how it changes.
Okay.
Go back to the start there.
Okay, here.
Yeah, go back to the start and just run it over in about a minute.
Oh, right. Amazing. Of course, 90 days later, after Yah painted, let's go back to the photograph just so that we can... 90 days after Yah painted this, and the date here, he was 5 days old. 90 days later, he was 5 days old, which is his age in days on the date of the resurrection, April the 5th, 33 AD. As Jesus, when he went to the cross, he was 3 days old. 2 days later, 5 days old. So this was 90 days after he painted this on July the 31st, 1977, he was the age of Jesus on the date of the resurrection, which was all about arising out of the sepulchre after being wrapped in the shroud and leaving his image on it. All right, let's finish this here, and now you will get to hear 40 minutes of David Elkington's interview and the threats against his life for the discovery, because in the world of lies, which is the world that we live in, you cannot have evidence such as this for Jesus, historically, but more importantly, we shall forbid Christ. Yah today, Brian, Leonard, Golightly-Marshall.
They're not doing a very good job of it.
They're not. It has escaped them for sure.
But I did notice there was a few things where people were maybe saying that it wasn't true.
Yes, that's right.
That it was fantasy.
Yeah, a little less than pleasant, some of the comments on there.
So how do you feel about that? What was your reaction to that?
Well, it was... we made the announcement on the BBC in 2011, and the first week...
After you'd got these scholars...
yes, and we did it with the backing of the Jordanian government and the Director General of the Department of Antiquities at the time.
So the scholars, sorry to interrupt, but the scholars, when they were testing, they had the photos. Did they have any sort of tangible objects at that point?
Yes, they had. We had a codex which we brought back from Jordan, and before that we had a small lead tablet, with writing on it.
So they had something. Were you dating at that particular time? Were you dating? No, I mean,
we couldn't. We had various tests done at that stage, and which have said to us on a regular basis, because we had 15 different laboratory tests undertaken at different laboratories
between 2009 and 2011.
Between 2009 and actually today.
But at that point, though,
at that point we'd already had 9 or 10 done.
So then you went on the news.
Yes.
You felt really confident.
Yes,
you felt really confident.
Well, particularly
on the
because the Director General of the Department of Antiquities, he was an archaeometallurgist himself, and he felt confident enough, having read the reports, to back it and say, yes, let's go public with this. And so that's what we did. We did a press release, and it was approved by him and by some senior members of the Jordanian royal family, and so we went live with it, and it was great. We had a huge amount of positive publicity, and it went all around the world, and everyone was very excited. And then 8 days later, an Oxford classicist named Peter Toneman wrote an article for the Times Literary Supplement in which he condemned and denounced the codices as modern tourist tat, and that was having not seen any of the test results, and also against some very eminent scholars who went on record on the press release.
What was he? Did he get hold of some photos or something? Is that how he
had one very small cropped photo of just a single line of Greek on one codex that we weren't even sure that was authentic, and we had made that quite clear to him. It was a copper codex, and we were just curious. It was only because a friend of ours' daughter was actually at the same college, and she just said, well, I can get this translated for you. And so he did that, and he said he thought it was fake, and we were like, fair enough, that's fine, and we agreed with it. And then
so maybe it wasn't his fault. Maybe he just thought, well, if all of their codices are like this.
No, because we specified that we had lead ones tested, and that we hadn't had this one tested, and we didn't think, we had doubts about it. But he chose to ignore that because he since had got a promotion on the back of all the publicity he's engendered for himself in denouncing the codices. And he went on, after that he went on the BBC on TV, basically saying that he would stake his entire academic reputation on the collection of codices being modern forgeries.
Right.
And after he did that, then that basically, because he's an Oxford professor, even though it's not his area of expertise, he hadn't seen any of the test results, and he kind of went against the experts that had studied them. It didn't matter because he's from Oxford. Everybody listened to him, and I think they conveniently listened to him. And particularly, a lot of these American evangelist scholars just went online and just went crazy and were saying they're fake, they're fake, they're fake, even though they had seen absolutely nothing. But because he went out and said it, it gave them the courage to do that. And then it got very personal. And even though we've never met these people or don't know them, they don't know anybody that we know,
So then was it a character assassination?
It was a character assassination, and
and they were trying to dig deeper.
If they can't discover something about you, they make it up, and that's.
And then they wanted to dig deeper and see that if you.
Well, if you shoot the messenger, then basically you can discredit the discovery, and and they largely succeeded for a certain amount of time, until the University of Surrey came on board and did the tests, and they put out a press release. So if it actually came directly from the University of Surrey. And the heading of it was that the Jordan Codices are not modern forgeries, and that was.
So let's just backtrack here again. So you've been on the BBC News, okay?
Yes,
and then you've got this. This guy's turned up and said no, they're fake.
Yes.
And then was there more backlash from there?
Oh yeah, I mean there was a really nasty stuff from these scholars and pseudo scholars online, as we were trying to save the site. Yeah. And trying to save any more of these codices from being sold off on the black market. And what they did was just give carte blanche to all of the smugglers and everybody to go ahead and do it. And the site was looted. I mean, what the damage that he caused, and then these bloggers afterwards was very, very bad. I'm sure
somebody like Graham Hancock is an expert at coming back to these. People that are trying to say, it's just a load of rubbish. Because I remember reading the book by Graham Hancock, The Gods, something.
Fingerprints of the Gods. Yeah.
That's kind of what got me interested in the other side of history. Yeah. Which may be true, maybe not. I don't know. I'm not that.
The difference between us and Hancock is in fact there's quite a wide chasm, I'd suggest, because
what I was saying that he deals with a lot of criticism.
He
must have a
really. But he's also an established author too.
Yeah, and we were backed. We were backed entirely by academe on this discovery. We had proven beyond a doubt that they're authentic. We've proven beyond a doubt that they contain legible Paleo-Hebrew scripts, which some of these bloggers, a lot of these bloggers, in fact, ignorantly were saying, oh no, it doesn't make any sense. Of course it didn't make any sense, because they didn't speak the language.
And what about, what's the reaction from family and friends?
Well, our friends know who we are, and obviously they were very upset for us, because the picture that was painted of us online by these people that didn't know us was quite monstrous, and they knew that it was totally untrue, so they felt very badly for us that we had to go through that. And no support from family. That was, but that was very disappointing. But
so do you think, in regards to friends and family, do you think maybe some of them were trying to say, maybe don't give yourself too much to this whole thing, because
it was too late. The problem was because the cat had already been let out of the bag and everything was out there. So it created this just massive furore that was out of control, and more people were jumping on the bandwagon, because that's what the way people are. It's unfortunately, and then a lot of the scholars were so afraid of being attacked themselves that they.
Oh yeah, once it's a hot potato, no one's going to touch it.
No, and they just let us be the sitting targets, and nobody would even say, "This is really wrong. What's being done?" But no one would even say that. So, but yet they were all wanting our analyses and wanting us to help and provide everything. But nobody would, nobody was willing to stand up and say, "Wait a minute, these guys aren't bad people," and that was, that's not very nice.
So this whole story then became rather personal for you, and
it's hard not to be when yes, absolutely.
You've suffered
but the difficult thing is that nobody actually looked, because the attacks were quite undignified and personal and very ill reflecting on the people doing it. Nobody looked at their background and said, well, who are these people? And if you actually scratch the surface,
but the internet can be like that, can't it?
Well, it is, but and that is the problem, is that nobody looked to see who they were and what their backgrounds were,
and that's the problem,
what their agenda was in doing so.
Because the problem is as well nowadays, if you Google something, if you're caught up in something, and you Google your name or you Google a subject, it's going to come straight up. So the bad news is going to rise to the top, because that's what's interesting.
And the vested interest will keep it there as well.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Why you're still committed to this 100%? Are you still committed to getting the whole story out? Is it kind of almost now that you kind of want to see it to the end, so that you can kind of clear your name?
Absolutely.
Against all the
absolutely. And I think we just want to move on from it all, because it's dragged on for such a long time. We never could have expected that, and we just hoping that something will happen, whether if it comes out enough in the media, there'll be enough pressure and somebody will do something, because it's really we've pushed so long for it because we felt that it was knowledge that everybody has a right to know. It's our heritage, and it's not up to other people to determine whether they're suppressed and to determine what knowledge that we have and what we don't have. And I think we're getting very close, and we have some more information that's going to be coming out soon, which we're really positive that is going to make a very big difference and finally offer that break that we've been looking for a very long time.
Some people might be suspicious that you're trying to make money or trying to...
Well, that's been the biggest accusation, which is very ironic that was the thing that they were most concerned about, and I think even above, a religious threat, because a lot of these American scholars and Christian scholars, they make a lot of money from writing books, giving lectures, TV. A lot of them sell religious tat, mugs, iPad covers. I mean, you name it. It's a huge booming business, and they saw us. That's like the pot calling kettle black, as people that were going to be a threat to their Christian business. And I think that's really what a lot of it is about. And also a lot of these scholars have spent years and built careers on towing a certain line. And here we're coming over and saying, no, even though we didn't explicitly say that, but the implication is that their scholarship is going to be turned upside down, so we've just upset a lot of apple carts on a lot of levels. And
furthermore, we're now actually working officially now with the University of Surrey on continuing analysis of other codices, and they're backing us to the hilt. We're now both attached to them academically, which has helped us hugely, and working with them has been great because now that they've seen for themselves that the things are authentic and that they're the real McCoy, they really want to get down to work to find out what they say, what they mean, and continue this quest. They're very excited by it.
So can you tell me what's inside, what is written inside the bulk of these codices that you've found in Jordan?
Yeah, we've got quotes from the book of Proverbs and Psalms, which are all Old Testament texts. We've also got quotes from the book of Daniel, which talks about the coming of the Son of Man, or as it would be in normative Hebrew, the Son of the Man. We've got other references as well, which are kind of talking about the differences between the community that wrote them, their expectations of who and what the Messiah is, as opposed to obviously strands of Judaism beyond their purview, outside of their community. But one of the most important things that's written inside them is literally on the codices there's a picture of the menorah, the famous Jewish candlestick, and underneath the lower branches in Paleo-Hebrew there's a text that says Elek Beitum, and that means literally when translated, I will walk uprightly, or likewise I will shine in righteousness. Now that's, we believe, is a resurrection text. It's talking about somebody confronting God and actually standing upright in his presence. So in other words, they've lived a high moral life with great moral purpose, and it's talking about, I've got to get up and go.
So basically, the language that was used to write these codices that you found, it's going back, it's an old form of Hebrew.
Yeah, it's so old that it sprung out of the Phoenician language family some 12 to 1300 years prior to the era of Jesus.
And I guess there's the same situation in archaeology where people are trying to be famous and trying to get a name for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge amount of egoism, but it's not just that. It's also who is funding them. Are they loyal to those funders? Does that mean, therefore, that they can only say certain things? And then there's the viewpoint of the university itself that they represent. Is it, for instance, a Trinitarian university where it's, basically of an evangelical persuasion? In that case, if you say something controversial, beware, you've got to be very careful. So there's all of those political things to take into account. And yet, in that famous scene, prior to the crucifixion, Jesus before Pilate, Pilate says, why are you here? And Jesus says, I came to bear witness to the truth. And Pilate says, well, what is truth? Boom, boom. And you kind of think, these are people who manipulate fact. Archaeology, whatever you think about it, it's mostly about interpretation. So you can take the fact and you can run with it in any number of ways. But as for truth, that's a much more poisoned chalice. And that's basically, I believe, what the codices are offering. They're offering the truth about Christian origins and where they come from. And I think that's incredibly powerful.
And right, so have you looked at all of the texts from these codices?
Yeah.
Has everything been photographed? You know, this farmer had these.
Yeah, Bedouin. Hassan the Bedouin had.
Hassan.
Yeah, he had 35 codices and a number of small scrolls.
Did you photograph everything?
I photographed everything. I took high definition photographs.
So, does anybody? Is this public domain, or just you have this?
At the moment, only I have it. We are in the process of setting up an image library, but I haven't put an awful lot of it online because the abuse we have received from academe has been such that I thought, well, why should I expose myself to any more ridicule? It just doesn't make, it just doesn't make sense.
Have you translated all the syntax that's on there?
No, I'm not a Paleo-Hebrew expert myself. I mean, obviously after 10 years of being involved with this, I've become much more knowledgeable about it, and I can read the script to a certain extent. And,
do you think that?
But I've asked the experts, and they've done an awful lot of translating, but there's a lot more yet to be done.
And so, like in one codex, how many pages are there? I mean, is it a big book? Is it how many?
Depends upon the codex you're looking at. Some of them have, like the slimmer ones have about 5 metal plates stitched together, but there are others with upwards of 20 odd plates.
And just with your hand, how big are they?
They range from that size. The central codex with the image of Jesus on is about that size, and is described as such in the Book of Revelation, chapter 5.
So the writing must be really small in it.
Oh yes, it is. Yeah, it's quite small. And then some of the bigger ones are about this size, and they're very they're very paperbacks. Well, sorry, actually large hardback sized, and very corroded and very tolerant.
How did they etch? Was it a knife that they etched?
This is what's really interesting. We wondered about this for years. We thought perhaps moulds had been cut out in hard rock, because when you looked at the photographs, you could see granulation. And then our analyst actually had to go to a family party somewhere in Norfolk and got talking to the only producer of lead sheeting left in the country, and he told him immediately how these things were made, and it's fascinating. You take a bed of sand and you wet it. Now you know what sand is like when it's wet, because if you walk along the seashore you'll see your footprints, and they last for quite a while. You'll get many tide inflows coming in, and gradually it will diminish. So basically what the water's doing is compacting the sand.
Right.
And then obviously they hand wrote into the sand and put in these images of palm trees and menorah, the Jewish candlesticks, etc. Then into that they just poured molten lead, and within a matter of a minute or so that would have cooled. They could peel it back, and you had lead of a uniform thickness, and it could then be cut up into plates. And of course then they were stitched together, literally holes punched through the sides, and sometimes all around, and then sealed. So fascinating things, yeah.
Give me a quick summation. What is it saying anything different to what's? Is there anything interesting that's inside it?
All I can say is that it's very, very Jewish. A lot of it seems quite forbidding. We're not talking here about biographical details or anything like that. If you want to find biographical details, you've got to search in the fact that it's handwritten, and you've got to look at all of that and what they were meaning by it. But a lot of it is just religious, expression in terms of parables and statements like that. And I suspect that what's happening is that if you go then to that text in the Old Testament as such, and then read what's above it and below it, that's what it's giving you. It's giving you the whole text, which is a justification for the Messiah who will come. But I mean, for instance, on the front page of the Central Codex, we've got variant readings. It could well be that the line underneath says, "Praise be to he who has come," or "who will come." Someone has actually determined that it refers to the bridegroom, which could be a reference to the figure of wisdom, who features all over the codices. And of course, wisdom in this sense is female. It's the divine feminine. So that offers a difference of opinion immediately, because the divine feminine, in its original state, was actually the figure of the Holy Spirit. And I mean, I think it makes a lot more sense. So you've got that idea that you've got God the Father, if you like, God the Mother or the Holy Ghost, and then God the Son, who is in the form of the King. But what's really interesting about this is that it's what I call the Clark Kent Superman moment. I don't think that Jesus was Jesus Christ until his baptism. That's what the Gospels tell us. What the Codices tell us, it seems to me, and from researches I've undertaken, is that I think that they're telling us that in that chapter in the Last Supper where he goes into the upper room, that actually the upper room is the interior of the temple itself, and that he's gone into the temple to be crowned king, more or less, the king of Israel. But he's not a temporal king. He's a kind of a spiritual king, because he says this to Pilate. He says, "My kingdom is not of this world," and I think that's more or less what he's doing. And he's gone in there. He's been crowned, and at that moment, he's in that really secret, dark place called the Holy of Holies. And in that moment, the spirit of the divine has entered into him, and when he comes out at that moment, he's then Jesus Christ, Jesus the Anointed One. So that the spirit being in him, he's the king, and the king is like a semi-divine, king God, which is what Jesus effectively is in the Christian religion today. So any utterance he makes is both divine and holy. So a mortal man has actually emerged as immortal, if you like, and that's I think what they're telling us. They're telling us that story that.
So is it different from the other writings of him, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, for example?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, what's interesting in all of this is that, as I said earlier on, it's all about interpretation, and different schools of thought interpret the Dead Sea Scrolls in different ways. Some say, they're just purely Jewish, but as I said earlier on, we don't know what Judaism was. There was no stock Judaism at the time. Some say, we could be looking even at early Christian documents. This is about the scrolls. Now, obviously, we know from the timescales that that's possibly unlikely. But however, there are statements in the codices that are to be found on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And given that the codices are books, they're in book form, that would suggest therefore a link with the community who wrote the scrolls. And that's why we know them to be Nazarene or Essene documents, I'm sure. That is to say the early church.
Right.
And we've got something here which is literally the foundation stone of Christianity. Do we have anything to be afraid of? I don't think so. I think it could lead to a massive renewed increase in Christianity, but in a positive sense.
But who wrote the book? Who wrote the codices, in your opinion?
In my opinion,
yeah.
The early church father Papias, who was the Bishop of Hierapolis in around about the 140s AD, says that the oracles of the Lord were composed by the Apostle Matthew. If Papias is talking, when he says of oracles, he's actually talking about testimonial structures, as in our book, which has got oracles in it, then the answer is the Apostle Matthew and the Apostle John. And I believe that's that those are the authors
of these codices.
Yeah. Because the question is that
were they written it by hand, or is it?
Yeah, they were written in hand into the sand, and then the lead was poured over. I think
somebody would have done that. Obviously, somebody probably who was professional at the time doing it.
In some of the journeys of St. Paul in the region, particularly around the coast of Lebanon and Anatolia, modern day Turkey, he talks about meeting metal workers and people like that. So these people had knowledge of these things. But we mustn't forget as well that the books were all sealed. They were wrapped up in pieces of linen and placed into arks or boxes, and then they were sealed again, and then they were sealed in caves. Right. So these were meant to be seen by very, very few people, it seems to me, and therefore they contained secret teachings, the secret teachings of the church, which is why I believe they were written by the apostles, because only they could have had that knowledge.
So 2000, we've touched upon 2009. 2011, David, can you explain what happened? Why did you go back, and what happened when you went back, and who went back in 2011?
Yeah, we basically got in touch with the Jordanians through contacts, and the head of the Department of Antiquities then was Professor Ziad Al-Saad, and he invited us across to Jordan. But first of all, we made an announcement on the BBC. with the blessings of the government of Jordan, and then we flew across to Jordan to discuss this with Professor Al-Saad, and we went to the site, and they were really, really excited.
Professor Al-Saad is from the Jordanian Antiquities.
He was the head of antiquities in Jordan. He's now one of the senior executives of the University of Yarmouk. In fact, I think he's Vice Chancellor of the University of Yarmouk, which of course is known as the Harvard of the East. So he's a very eminent man. But he was also in for a very hard time as well, because literally within a month or so of us departing Jordan, the cover-up began. The pressure was on him to not release the results, to be silent about it, and they even had false allegations made against him in terms of tampering with an archaeological site, which was completely untrue, but was enough to distract him away from the subject matter for a couple of years whilst he fought to clear his name.
So he got in trouble?
Yes, simply for being involved, and we think that the
so
main...
is that when they turned? Is that when the Jordanian government turned? Did they turn on you, or what happened?
In retrospect, I think that was the time when they began to turn, and then
2011. So
yeah.
let's just cut back here. So there's this guy, what was his name again? Professor
Ziad Al-Saad.
And he's a professor, right?
Really, really super...
cool guy. Cool
professional guy.
We like this guy, yeah?
Yeah, one of the best in the world.
Okay, we like this guy, so...
Very much. He's a really great man. And
he came on board and said, I think it's true.
He stated explicitly that the discovery was much, much bigger than Dead Sea Scrolls, and that what we have here are truly authentic documents. And of course, we thought.
Should we set up should we put him and the other guy who didn't like it in a boxing room? See who would win? Who's tougher?
Dr. Al-Saad by a long shot.
Really?
Yeah.
Should we bring him over and get him to meet this?
Muntajam Howie, the present director, is
I think that's the best way to sort it out, man to man, isn't it?
He's a very sad man, I have to say.
Right.
So
we got this professor out in Jordan. He thinks so he believes it's true.
Yes.
Blah blah blah.
He goes to the site.
But who restrains him? Who's above him?
It's members of the Department of the Interior and other aspects of government as well.
So they're not happy. They're like, no, let's stop this.
Yeah, political pressure has been put on them from, I suspect, from a certain neighbouring country who don't want this to emerge, because it's going to take the limelight away from certain of their tourist sites and certain of their discoveries. So at that point then, we realised that we were going to be having a bit of a tough time. But we had one thing to our advantage. When we went to Jordan in 2011, we returned with a codex.
Another codex?
Yeah.
So now you've got two?
No, we've handed them back the tablet, which had been smuggled out of their country, as an act of duty and of decency. We gave it back to them because we felt
this was the 2009 one, wasn't it?
This is the one we'd taken out in 2009. We gave this to the Department of Antiquities, and we gave them another copper tablet which we had.
Why didn't you keep them?
Because we felt it was our duty. We felt it was honourable to give back to Jordan what was Jordan's.
So now you have nothing?
Now we have nothing, no.
That's a real shame.
It's a pity, but there are other codices which we're in the process of analysing at the moment, and of which there will be an announcement, I'm quite sure, quite soon.
They're in England, so there are some more codices in England, right?
There are others coming here, and furthermore, we had this codex when we came back, and we had it on loan ostensibly for a year. I got in touch with the Embassy of Jordan when the year was up, and I received no response from them whatsoever about it. So I thought, well, whilst I've got it, we might as well continue to analyse it. And we took it to the University of Surrey, where they did initial tests, but the initial tests showed a small radioactive signature from one of the isotopes, which suggested modern provenance, or reasonably modern provenance. And we were very uncertain about it, because the script on it, the state of the corrosion on it, though not as corroded as many of the others, there was still enough there for our analysts to have grave doubts about the dating. And then the miracle came in summer of 2016. Surrey agreed to retest the codex, but this time they break the seals and open it. And the news came back that there was no radiation whatsoever it was the real McCoy. It was well over a couple of 100 years old, and if you look at the inscriptions and everything else, it couldn't have been created 200 years ago. Our analyst went further and said that on the basis of the corrosion, which is basically what you have on the microscopic level, and sometimes it's really obvious in the codices because there are tiny holes in them.
Yeah.
What's happened is that the lead is impure, and over a course of 2,000 years, the chemical impurities have escaped from the metal matrix, and they've formed crystals on the surface and then dropped out.
But
so that's how we dated them. The key to the codices is that the impurities level within the lead matches Roman levels again, and it's fairly obvious that at some stage in antiquity a lot of the silver has been removed from some of the lead, but there are others where it hasn't been. And the key point here is that the corrosion has taken place over a very long period of time. Now, I said to you about the cover of the codex when it was first tested by Surrey having a radioactive signature. They now worked out how that came about. They found that whilst it was in the cave, water from the exterior had washed in and over the cover of the codex and gave it that radiation signature, because in the 1940s, when the atomic bomb was developed, suddenly they were exploded in the atmosphere, you had radioactive polonium. So you can date things from the atomic period and to the pre-atomic period.
Okay, so in 2011 you picked up a codex from where?
We were given a codex by the Department of Antiquities
by this cool guy?
By the Department of Antiquities.
What's his name again?
Professor Ziad Al-Sar.
He sounds a really cool dude. If I'm ever gigging in Jordan, I'm going to seek him out and have a tea with him.
He's a brilliant man.
And have a mint tea.
And,
could happen next year, who knows?
He's great. And so we brought it back ostensibly for analysis. We were charged with getting it analysed and finding a proper laboratory to undertake that analysis, which is precisely what we did. And then, of course, in 2016, finally it was revealed to be authentic and to be 2,000 years old. And then...
So you went back and then they said, come here, mate, bring the codex with you.
Yeah, but I didn't have the codex with me. I left it behind in the UK because...
Is it still here?
Nope.
Where is it now?
It's now back in Jordan. It has disappeared into the ether, probably for a lot of money.
So you've done the round of TV?
Yeah.
And then the antiquities place said, come here.
Yep, they demanded I go in, so I went in to see them, and much to my bemusement, I was surrounded not by just the director himself, but a whole coterie of people. And the one thing I noticed, I have to tell you this, the first thing I noticed about the Department of Antiquities is that there's not a single antiquity in sight. What you have, literally, is rows upon rows of box files, bureaucracy, So that kind of tells you what to expect in a way.
So there's no, it's not a museum and there's no objects?
No, there's nothing there.
They've sold it all?
You never know. I was surrounded by these people, and then I was surrounded and accused and abused by a very...
Did you have a translator, yeah?
Yes, I did. A very ruddy-faced Dr. Muntajam Howie, who was an extremely unpleasant man, but very amusing, I have to say, because he was more apoplectic, and he was basically saying that the codices are fake.
Yep.
Which I challenged him. I said, well, the University of Surrey's report will actually, disprove that. I said, why don't you take a copy? No. Apparently, I had no right to publish any academic work on the codices at all, forever, anywhere in the world. Which, frankly, was just idiotic. Because, of course, I do. I live in the UK.
Yeah, it's free speech.
I'm a UK citizen, a citizen of Ireland, and, frankly, the whole thing just descended into farce.
So was there shouting?
From his side, yes. I'm afraid to say...
You were saying, don't do this, how dare you!
No, I decided that I'm just going to just sit it out.
It's a shame you couldn't record it. It's a shame you could have videoed it or recorded it.
I did record it on my telephone.
So you've recorded it. You got this on.
Yeah,
anyway,
I
how did you get out of there?
I spent 2 hours being interrogated, because it wasn't an interview at all. It was an interrogation.
and I was behind me were two very swarthy gentlemen dressed in army fatigues,
right?
And it got very, very nasty, to the effect that my life was threatened
by this guy.
By most of them.
They just said, look, if you publish anything, we're going to come and
cut your throat.
Right.
And
they weren't messing about.
No. He said also they would shoot me and.
They would shoot you.
Yeah,
right.
And I said, look, make up your minds because I can only die once. So however, I said, if you want to do it, then go ahead, be my guest.
Right.
Because the truth is out there, and if you do kill me, then you'll just make a bigger story of it.
Right. So how did it end? How did you get out?
Well, I was informed by them that I wouldn't be allowed to leave Jordan until the Codex had been returned.
Right.
And then I thought, well, fine.
Well, if it's fake, why do they want it back?
If it's fake, exactly. Why would they want it back? Why would it? So a couple of days later, Jennifer and I were due to return to the UK, and we were forcibly parted at the airport gates, and Jennifer was allowed to go home. I was, I was held captive. And
so they kept you?
It was very unpleasant.
House arrest?
Yes, I was under house arrest for a while, and then there was an all points bulletin put on me at all of the ports of departure, and there was also a lot of harassment, people following me. It all got very cloak and dagger, and it was very, very nasty. And I'm afraid to say that it did, yes, I would admit it sort of had its effect, but at the end of the day I thought to myself, well, they're going to all of this trouble, and they're showing me, and they're showing the world, that by their actions these things really are very, very important.
So what was the outcome? How did you get out of the country, and how did you...
In the end, I had to pay at my own expense to have somebody courier the Codex from the UK to Jordan,
right,
and return it. But I was allowed to leave the country, and threatened again that if I started to tell this story, if I was to talk about the codices any further to promote their authenticity, that they would send somebody to kill me. And I just thought, well, it's just really sad that a really great discovery has come down now to...
And who said they would kill you?
A bunch of threats.
Who said they would kill you?
The Jordanian government.
There was an official that actually...
Yes, and it's very sad. I suspect that it's not really their fault. I suspect that pressure is being leveraged on them by forces from on high, whose interests are purely monetary in terms of concerns. And we know for a fact that there are a couple of very high-profile smugglers who themselves have been charged and indicted in the United States for their activities, who are still in operation and who are dealing in codices. In 2013, the Department of Antiquities storage facility was broken into. The only thing that was removed were codices from the cave site in northern Jordan.
So how many codices in your estimate, a rough estimate, are there in existence now?
Well, of the Jordanian hoard, I think there was around about 70, of which now probably only 35 still exist. Because
their whereabouts are known.
The whereabouts are known. I mean, I hope that they've been sold into private collections rather than being destroyed. But to be honest with you, in the medieval period, just at the time of the Crusades, the Pope gave instructions to the crusading knights and the heads of the Templar organisation that a cache of 70 books made of lead, which had been hidden in caves somewhere in Palestine, were to be tracked down, to be located, and to be destroyed. Now,
so who gave that?
1,000 years later.
Who gave that order?
The Pope himself.
To the Templars?
Yep.
To the Knights Templar?
Yep, to the Knights Templar.
And did they carry that out? Well,
this is on record.
Could that be the reason why they excavated? Was it Temple of
I wouldn't be at all surprised, because
Well, is that what they were looking
it
for?
seems to me that if you're going to be excavating the temple itself in the middle of Jerusalem, that the rumours therefore would be exaggerated.
Because they knew what they were looking for something.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the rumours of them digging there would have been much more substantial for the time, because truth gets out in many ways and forms. So there would have been much more specific information about what had been found and what had been located. But instead, we've got this rather strange rumour of the Templars digging. I think, therefore, the rumour is a sign that it came from somewhere else in Palestine, not from Jerusalem. And if the rumour, therefore, has come from the North Country and has reached Jerusalem, that's why the rumour is vague. Because something has been discovered, it has been located,
But
for whatever reason...